Hi everyone, and welcome back for another episode in my shooter series in Unreal Engine 4. Previously we've been setting up all our guns and their coding to make them shoot the way we want them to shoot. So we're getting them to do a hit scan, we're doing assault rifles, Gatling guns, charge rifles, etc, etc, etc. Now, one of the things I've been promising from the start of this series is that we're going to get into randomized weapons and how to make the game generate procedurally different weapons and different effects, different stats and things like that. So in this episode we're going to look at the process of how to make your gun randomize its appearance in its mesh. So this I've already set this up so I can show you what I mean. So if I can drag these out, you can see I can spawn in loads of different guns and you can see them generate in front of your eyes different permutations. Now I'm not going to do an art tutorial, I'm just doing programming, but so I've just done really easy block out weapons here, and you can see it's spawning a variety of different shapes and sizes of weapons. Okay, so how does this work? Well, for this episode we're going to dive into Maya a little bit to explain how to set this up, and then I'm going to show you the code on how to set it up so it spawns these in randomly. Okay, so let's have a look at Maya. So in Maya, it may look like a mess. What you need to do, hopefully you're familiar with Maya a little bit, so I don't have to go into too much. So you start off with a chassis, and the way you have to think about it is that the 0, 0 part of this grid is where the player's model's hand is going to be. Okay, so if you think that's where the hand's going to be, you can line up with the chassis like so, and this is only true just for the chassis. Okay, so the chassis is the middle part of the body. Now for this example I'm only going to do several things. I'm going to do the barrel, the sights and the grip, but you can do as many as you like. Borderlands does quite a few. As you can see on the screen here, there's a picture of all the different components that make up a Borderlands type weapon. So the way it works is that you have a chassis, a base body, and you basically have sockets all over it in the engine, and you attach different parts to these sockets. So what you need to do in Maya is model all the different components using the 0, 0 as the socket connection. Okay, so if 0, 0 is the socket connection, apart from the chassis, that would be true for all of the components. So for example, if I look at my barrel 1 here, so just on a very simple barrel, big beefy barrel here, and you can see here it will connect to the socket at 0, 0. I could probably move this up a little bit more like so, so it attaches right onto the end, but 0, 0 is where the socket will clip onto it. Okay, if I go into the other ones, barrel 3 for example, you can see here the socket here will connect to this like so. And the same is true for the sights. So here we've got a simple iron sight, and here you can see a scope, and as you can see they are touching and going through, slightly clipping through the grid in Maya, but 0, 0 is where you're aiming to be. So if you imagine the chassis being underneath here, even though it really isn't in Maya, and connecting to it there. Okay, I'll show you the grips. You can see these ones go below it because the socket is, imagining this is the socket of the chassis, it will go below. And the other grip I've got is this one. Okay, so you just got to simply model loads of different pieces. Okay, it's up to you how many you do, it doesn't really matter. And once you've done that, you want to export them all as an FBX. Okay, but you don't want to combine them, don't want to do any mesh combined stuff. You want your individual components to be separate things. Make sure you name them as well, because it'll be very confusing. Yeah, so I'm not going to go into how to use Maya too much, because I want this to be a more programming based tutorial rather than a Maya modeling tutorial. But if you want to learn how to use Maya or Blender, there are tons of tutorials on YouTube or anywhere else for you to look at. Okay, so once you've done that, you import them all in. and let's put them to a folder of their own, and you just import them all in, but don't combine them. So you get all the different pieces, including their physics and the skeletals as they are. So you want to make sure they're skeletal. And one thing that may happen, which happened to me, is that I modelled these facing the wrong way. So if that just happens when you import in, here, you tick, let's just pick it up here. So when you tick skeletal mesh, you want to change the rotation on the import rotation. If it doesn't work, delete it, re-import it until you get what you want. Okay. That's the only thing that may take a bit of fiddling about to make sure you get correct. But for my case, I had to rotate these by -90 in the Z-axis. Okay. So once these are imported all in as skeletal meshes, it must be a skeletal mesh. We can then begin coding it. So I'm going to just pause here and quickly go into set this up and go through it with you. Okay, so now I've got a clean project. I can start showing you how to do this. But before we go into that, I'm going to show you a quick fix for something that someone highlighted to me that I forgot to show you in the last episode. So in the last episode, we done these bullet holes. And you can see the line up here, but as soon as you aim down sights, you'll notice it isn't lined up anymore. That's because we're no longer using the correct camera. So I'm quickly going to show you how to fix that before we go into making the randomized gun. So if you go into your gun fully automatic and find the not fully automatic, sorry, go into the parent. There we are. So in the parent, we've done this last time, where we've done the hit scan, and it goes to true or false, and we've got true, get to the first person character, and get the first person camera. Okay, so to fix this, we don't actually need this, this, or this. You will need to connect the branch back up to the other branch. So instead of using the first person camera, all you do is get player, if that helps us spell it right, player camera manager. And then from there you can connect that up to there, and its root component can also go to there too. Okay, so get player camera manager. So the camera manager is basically what it sounds like. It basically is a actor that manages the cameras that are currently being used and their settings, and the components all of cameras all come from this. So we're getting the player camera manager, and that is basically going to get us the current camera we're looking through and get its root component, so where it currently is in the world, so we can get the world rotation and the world location. If I click compile and just test it out for you, you can see. So I can still shoot and it lines up like so, and if I line down sights, it will now line up with the sights. Okay, so that's that fix done. So moving on to what we are here to do, and that is to create our randomized weapons. So I have previously re-imported all my pieces in from Maya, and what you need to do is, well, what I'm going to do is I've made a separate actor just to demonstrate this process. I've made a gun only actor, and I've given it a skeletal mesh, and all I've done is set the chassis, gun part chassis, as the skeletal mesh. Okay, and you can see here the offset of it is over here. So we're going to do it on the gun only, and then we can copy and paste the code onto the various weapons later. I'm just doing it on here to make it nice and clean and easy for you to see. But it's up to you where you do this. So the way this works is we're going to go into the construction script. So as soon as the gun is made in the game, or the engine, it will call this script. And this is where we're going to determine its settings and its appearance. Okay, so in here we're going to do a sequence, and the sequence, what this is going to do is going to do the barrel first, then the scope, and then a grip. So we need to add a pin, and the sequence just goes through each one of these in sequence. There's nothing tricky there. So before we can begin here, we need to do a couple of things. So on the chassis, which we've got here, we need to open up that skeleton. So go to your gun parts, find your chassis, and you can open it up, and you can click on the skeleton tab in the top right. This will show you the skeleton of the chassis. If it hasn't got a skeleton mesh, that means you've probably done a static mesh instead. So you have to delete it and re-import it, and make sure you tick the skeletal mesh option. And on here we need to put in our sockets. So the first socket we're going to do is the barrel. So I'm going to go socket underscore barrel, and I'm going to move this to the front of the gun, like so. And then another socket for the scope, like so. And then another socket for the grip, socket underscore grip. You do a socket for each one of the various things you want to make randomized, and they say you can have quite a lot randomized if you wanted to. Okay, we'll be back here momentarily, but click save for now, and let's go back to our gun only model. So on the construction script, the way this works is that we're going to, in our local variables, add an array for each of the barrel, the grip and the scope, and the array is going to store all the meshes that are valid for this particular model or gun. So click on plus local variable, and you want to call it barrel mesh array. And in the barrel mesh array, you want to make sure it's a skeletal mesh, so go into variable type and type in skeletal mesh, and you want to make it an array by clicking on a little icon next to it and choosing the 3x3 grid of squares to make it an array. An array is simply just a list. Click compile, and you can add array elements to it. So click on it 3 times because we've got 3 barrels, and choose the barrels for each one of the array elements. So on then 0 is where we're going to do the barrel. So on then 0, drag this out and go add skeletal mesh component, and then from there you want to set skeletal mesh, and the new mesh you want to be is going to be randomized pick from this array. So drag the array out and choose get to get a reference to the array, and then from here we're going to get the length of the array, and then from that we get an integer, which means we could do a random integer function, and that will simply return a random integer within that number. And then from there we're going to get the barrel mesh array again and choose get, and that will get a random element from that array, and that array can be as large as you like, so you can have as many as you like, depends on how much you want to model. So on the get, that goes over to the new mesh of the set skeletal mesh. So now this will add the skeletal mesh component and set it to a randomized one. The next thing we're going to do is attach it to that socket. So from this return value on the add skeletal mesh component, drag this right through and go add to attach to component, and target is a scene component, so you can hook that up with the skeletal mesh of the actual chassis in the component list. So drag that out onto parent, and underneath you'll see a socket name box, and here you want to type in which socket you want to use, socket underscore barrel. Click compile and go to the viewport. Now you will notice something strange on the first time you do this, and that's because the way sockets work is that when you attach something to a socket, it inherits all the settings of that socket. So we need to rotate it, scale it, move the socket to be the way we want it to be. So click on the chassis skeleton, go to the socket barrel, and we can see from our, let's just close these ones, on our gun only, we need to rotate this up, okay, around the x-axis. So we're going to go rotate, and rotate it 90 degrees that way. Click save and go back and check your work so far. Okay, now this may be also, we need to, I think that one looks like it's the wrong way round as well in the Z axis, so we can go into the Z axis and go 180 there. Click save and go back to a gun. Is that right? If we move it, you can change it or randomize between each one. So there you go. I can see this one. I made this one so I can see which way it's facing. So you can see it's facing the wrong way. So let's rotate it back in 180 in the Z axis. This is all going to be trial and error to get exactly what you wanted. And I need to also rotate in the Y by 90 degrees as well. So 90 degrees there. Click save. And there we have it. And to show you what I mean furthermore with the socket, if I stretch the socket out this way, you can see the barrels increases too. And I'll go back there and I'm going to change the X and the Y to be 0.6 and 0.6 in the Z. Click save, and you can see the barrel there is now longer, and you can just move it back and forth and you'll see the construction script rewrite each time. Okay, so that's what we're going to do there. Cool. So the next bit is to do the scope. So on the sequence, we're just going to do exactly the same. So I'm going to copy and paste all this again. Hook up then one to this one. And this time though, I don't want a barrel mesh array, I want another array. And that one's going to be the scope mesh array. And the scope mesh array is going to be a skeletal mesh array again. I've got two scopes to pick from. So sites 1, sites 2. Compile. And you can see where you've got to drag these in. So drag that into there. Drag that into there, and make sure you change the socket name over here to socket barrel to socket scope. And again, you will need to rotate and scale and mess around with the socket to get exactly what you wanted. So let's just do this one. So go on socket scope, and I will want to rotate this in this angle. Like so, and I will want to rotate it in the Z as well. Now you can see here I want to fine tune my socket here so it's not ridiculously big or towering over the whole gun. So I can go in here and I can change the scale of it to be 0.7, 0.7, 0.7. You can see it's a bit smaller now. I can move it back a bit more. Like so. Cool. Okay, and the last one to do is simply just the grip. And you just do exactly the same thing again and again for each individual moment. So you just copy and paste it again. Back down here. Then 3, new mesh array, so grip mesh array. I've got 2 grips, so 2 elements. Compile, swap out the arrays here to the grip, change the socket name, compile. Have a look at what's broken. Okay, so I need to rotate my grip again. So go to socket grip, and we want to rotate it. Oh, accidentally made a copy. Rotate it around. It does take a bit of trial and error. I've gone the wrong way with that one. That's it. I've got rotating the Z now. There we go. Okay. And that is it. And you can see here every time I compile, it will randomize the gun. Okay. And that is basically it. As I say, this is not meant to be a good looking gun at all. I just wanted to show you how to attach different components, randomize them. Hopefully you can see how you can just easily expand this each time with different components. And you have quite a lot. In the next episode, I'm going to show you how to do it with materials as well, so you can change the colour of them and add even more randomised nature to the weapon itself. Okay, but that'll do. Thank you very much for watching, and if you've liked this video, please subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support me, head over to Patreon like these fine fellows, and support me over there, and you'll get some goodies such as access to videos early, access to our Discord, bit of one-to-one help, and whatever you want really. So if you head on over to there. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.